All right, continuing on with social cognitive theory. What we need to jump into, I'm a little bit far ahead, somehow this got advanced. What we need to jump into here is Walter Michel's cognitive affective theory. So, Walter Michel's theory, my light just went out. Walter Michel's theory specifically states that there's cognitive person variables that go into any personality factors in any given situation. He calls these cognitive person variables kind of your learned beliefs, your feelings, or even your expectancies that are specific to you as an individual and are going to characterize you as an individual. And so as you see here, there's this list below. Not all that important you memorize all of them, but just that you realize that there are components of Walter Michel's cognitive affective theory that will go into personality characteristic changes depending upon the situation. First, he calls encodings the number one and most important. Encodings are any beliefs that you have about the environment and other people. And so what he says is that as you walk into a situation where you have some kind of encodings about, let's say, a group of people, maybe you're interacting with a group of people that you don't like or that are catty or whatever, he would say that those encodings are gonna kind of guide how you are going to appropriate your personality traits in that situation. Number two are expectancies. This is what the person expects to follow from different behaviors and various behaviors, and also what you're able to do and what you're capable of doing. For me, I'm not necessarily a person who really likes to be outgoing. So if I know I'm going to a party, I'm going to kind of lay low a little bit. Let's say it's a larger family party or a wedding or something like that. I'm going to kind of lay low a little bit. I'm not going to necessarily put myself out there to major groups. I'm not the person who's going to necessarily be holding court within settings such as that. Affects are your own feelings, emotions, and other affective responses. So how do you feel in a given situation? Four are goals and values. What are you expecting or what do you want out of the situation you're getting yourself into? At times, you're just looking for camaraderie, like when you're sitting around your family dinner. Or sometimes it's you have different goals. You're in the midst of an interview, you want the job. Those are going to change, according to Walter Michel, your personality in that moment. And then lastly are your competencies and what he calls your self-regulatory plans. These are the things that you know you need to handle and kind of what you need to be able to do in any given situation. So especially self-regulatory plans, if I know I'm an individual who is looking to fill a role, I know I need to act in a certain way, do certain things. So for my own personal career and kind of my job as a teacher and assistant athletic director and football coach, I believe I need to do certain things in order to fulfill those roles and fulfill them competently. Okay, that is number 5, according to Walter Michel. So when looking at Michel's kind of affective theory, it's another component of kind of behavioral theory of personality in the idea that you are going to change who you are based upon certain things about the environment and how you feel and what you're looking for in terms of goals out of the situation. So in large part, once again, what you need to take from the behavioral / cognitive, social cognitive theories is the idea that your behaviors in terms of personality traits will change depending upon situation. Now, Michel does continue on a little bit, and he talks about the relationship between personal and situational variables. Just realize that personal dispositions will change up your behavior only in relevant situations. So one of the things within the ocean theory for trait theory, right? Neuroticism is the N in ocean for the big 5 for Costa McCrae, right? They would say that a person who is neurotic, who is anxious, will be anxious in, for the most part, all situations. Here, Walter Michel is saying, no, that's not necessarily true. An anxious person only is going to feel anxious or exude anxiety in situations that seem threatening. So they're not always going to be anxious. It's not going to work like that, right? What he says is that personal dispositions can lead to behaviors that can mess with situations and kind of alter them, which could promote other behaviors, right? So a person who is anxious might, number one, avoid situations that will cause them to be anxious, and so they're not necessarily showing that anxiety all the time. Or a person who's cranky and in a bad mood, you might trigger that same thing in others, especially as we're all sitting very close to our families and closer than we've probably ever been or been in a long time with our families. You can see the mood of somebody else in your house is going to and can mess with that. I'm saying that right now as I'm looking at my lovely wife. Yep. Okay, so you get what I'm saying there. Continuing that on, what Walter Michel's theory in large part kind of says is that we are going to, whenever we have the choice and the option, we're going to try and choose to be in situations that mesh well with our own personal dispositions, right? So if you're an extrovert, you're going to tend to place yourself in social situations. At that wedding, you're going to go get in the midst of a big conversation because you feel comfortable doing so, right? He does also say, though, that personal dispositions are a little bit more important in some situations than some of the others, right? Obviously, being at a party versus being at a funeral, your dispositions kind of don't really have a fit, don't have a big fit there. It's just something you do and doesn't really fit necessarily. So, with that taken care of, then that kind of takes us all the way through social cognitive theory. Remember, social cognitive theory or behavioral theory to personality, that is kind of this overall concept. This takes us through a series of different theorists, all the way from the major behavioral learning theorists, John B. Watson and Skinner, and then, of course, Julian Rotter, the idea of the locus of control, internals versus externals. Albert Bandura, reciprocal determinism. Seems difficult, but it's not. Your personality, according to him, is going to be created by a combination of these three factors: behaviors, external environment, and personal factors like your thoughts and feelings. And then we did talk about Walter Mischel, kind of takes that reciprocal determinism theory and just blasts it to the nth degree, talking about how you are always going to be slightly different and slightly change your personality traits and behaviors based upon what's going on in the situation and what you are looking to get out of the situation. So, in large part, that is the theory. So, to end today's lesson, I'll encourage you to go vote on the March Madness. Make sure you get that taken care of. In large part, tomorrow we need to talk about humanistic theory, and we'll talk about humanism and a little bit of Carl Rogers and even bringing back Abraham Maslow. And so we'll get that taken care of tomorrow. I do hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and as always, stay safe. Take care, guys.